guys, Cassie here. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're doing a wrap-up. So I don't usually do wrap-ups very often because honestly I just don't read enough to warrant an entire video at the end of every month. But this past month, some of you may know that I was going to do a readathon. I was taking some time off of social media, trying to spend less time watching TV and YouTube and stuff, and instead reading with that time. And I had this big lofty goal of reading like just tons and tons of books this month and vlogging the experience. And about halfway through the month, or like a week and a half in or so, I decided to stop doing the readathon, at least officially, and I stopped vlogging the experience. And that was mostly because the vlogging part was just too much for me, and I just discovered that I honestly don't really like vlogging very much, at least not on like a regular basis all the time, because I had just done a bunch of vlogs for Camp NaNoWriMo and then trying to continue it into the following month to vlog for my readathon as well. It just felt like I was constantly filming every single day for months, and that's just not at all what I enjoy. So I stopped vlogging, I stopped my readathon officially, but I did continue to still read last month. And although I didn't come close to finishing like my entire goal of, I don't even know how many books it was like almost 30 books that I wanted to read last month, I didn't come close to finishing that, but I did end up reading about 10 books last month, so I thought it might be a good time to do a wrap-up and talk about everything that I read. Now, there are going to be two honorable mentions here. One of them I'm not going to name by name because I really didn't like it, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by saying it. But another one was Sadie by Courtney Summers. I did start to read that one, and I started to read this other unnamed book. And I stopped reading both of those. The first one I stopped reading because I didn't like it and I'm not going to read it. But Sadie, I just wasn't really feeling at the moment, so I stopped. But I probably will pick up that book again at some point in the future. I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time. So those books aren't included on this list of 10 books, but they were books that I experienced in some fashion during the month of May. But without further ado, let's get into the 10 books that I did read this month. I'll be listing them in chronological order, starting with the first book I read in the month of May, which was The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I gave this book 4 stars on Goodreads, and I did talk about it quite a bit in my reading vlogs last month, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. So I'll just kind of briefly say that I liked the book actually kind of more than I expected, even though it did have a good amount of hype. Like, I did hear a lot about this book being really good, but I was a little nervous about some of the political undertones, that I might disagree with the overall message, but I actually didn't disagree with it at all. I thought it was spot on, just the perfect amount of, you know, diving into the political stuff, but not too far, if that makes sense. I talked about that a lot in my reading vlog, so I'm not gonna say it all again. Another element of this book I wasn't sure if I would enjoy was the insta-love part, because the whole sort of theme of the book kind of centers on insta-love, and I definitely did not like the male character as much as I could have, and I felt like his, just the way he was like instantly so super into the girl was a little off-putting to me, and I felt like I definitely more related to the female character. I can't remember her name, Natasha, I think. I definitely related a lot more to her and her kind of skepticism about the concept of love at first sight, because I don't really believe in love at first sight. But spoiler alert, I'm not going to spoil things too much here, but I will just say that I did enjoy the end of the book, and I liked that it wasn't too unrealistic in my opinion. Just the way they kind of wrapped up and concluded the story. It wasn't like everybody's just in love forever and they're gonna be together forever after meeting for one day, because that I think could have really, this was one of those books where it's, however they chose to end it could easily have made or broken. I was trying to say make or break, but in past tense, and so it just didn't translate well. But the ending was going to make or break the book for me, and to me, it made it. It was a good ending that I appreciated. I did only give it 4 stars because there were some things, like I said, I didn't really like the character. Daniel, I think was his name. Didn't like him a whole lot, and there were some other little things that I just didn't really click with, but overall I thought it was good. And if you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on that, you can go back and watch my reading vlogs because I talked a lot more about it while I was reading it at the time. The second book I read this month was Sleeping Murder by Agatha Christie, and I gave that book 5 stars on Goodreads because Agatha Christie is the bomb. I wasn't so sure about her writing style at first. I was a little thrown off. This was the first Agatha Christie book I ever read, and she's very like just matter of fact in her writing, and she gets right to the point, which is not what I'm used to reading. Like, I'm definitely not someone who likes a lot of purple prose and stuff unless the whole book is like just so over the top that it's like that's what the book is supposed to be, then I kind of like it. But I do kind of like simple writing, but her writing was a lot more simple than I'm used to, and I was a little surprised by that. But at the end of the day, the story itself was just so good, and the mystery was so juicy, and the twist ending was like, it just blew my mind because I totally thought I had everything figured out, and I had nothing figured out. And it was a really, really good book. And honestly, the last few chapters really, I think, brought the star rating for me up from a 4 to a 5, because the writing style being what it was, I was leaning more towards a 4, but that ending, I mean, it just blew me away. So I couldn't give it anything less than 5 stars, and I really want to read more of her books in the future. The third book I read in the month of May was The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, and holy crap, you guys, that's my favorite book of all time now. I totally knew that would happen. I've been wanting to read this book for years, honestly, ever since the movie came out, because I loved the movie, and I knew if I ever read this book, it's gonna be my favorite book because it's like, I love that movie so much. And as is usually the case, the book was just a billion times better even than the movie was, and I so totally fell in love with that book. It is just, it's my favorite book ever. I don't really have words to say, honestly, about everything that I loved about it. I loved it. Obviously, in case you couldn't tell, that got a 5-star from me on Goodreads for sure. And honestly, I might do like a more formal review of that book in the future because there really are a lot of tangible things. I do actually have words for why I love that book so much, but they're just like, it's gonna take me a while to process those words and really like put it together in a nice, concise way. And I'm not equipped to do that right now, but yeah, it was absolutely amazing. If you haven't read it, if that's like you, oh my gosh. If, like me, that's been on your list for a long time and you're like, oh, I know I'll like that book, but I'm not getting around to it, freaking get around to it and read it right now because it's incredible. I loved it. So while I actually ended up reading a ton of really great books this last month, that one was definitely my favorite. And that book was quickly followed up by my least favorite read of the month, which was Pride by E.B. Zoboy. I hope I'm saying that name right. Oh my gosh, you guys. Pride was just so meh in every sense of the word. I just didn't like it. I didn't like any of the characters, especially the main character. I thought she was the worst, and not in a way that's like, you know, kind of a likable, flawed character. It was like, she's just not likable. She's just mean and stupid and judgmental, and I just did not like her at all. I also didn't like the romance, mostly because I didn't like the main character at all, so obviously I didn't really want anybody to end up with her because they all deserve better. But I also just didn't find the romance believable at all. I felt like there was not really much romantic tension between the characters at all. It just went straight from like, it went from 0 to 100. It was like they hate each other, and then all of a sudden they saw each other at this event at a university, and now they're flirting and they like each other and they're kissing, and it's like, but why though? Like, what do either of them see in each other? She's hated him this whole time. He hasn't really hated her, but like he's been hated by her, so why would he like this girl who's just judging him all the time and being mean to him? I don't understand it. I don't understand why they liked each other. I don't understand why anyone in the story thought that they would be cute together or that they were a good couple. And the story was also really boring, and like nothing happened through most of the middle section of the book and even the beginning of the book, really. Like most of the book, pretty much nothing was happening except our main character being a jerk and judging the love interest for not being black enough for her, basically. So that book got 1 star from me, which is actually very rare. I hardly ever give a book that I actually finished reading 1 star. To me, 1 stars are reserved for books that are so bad that I just literally couldn't even get through it. But this one, I almost didn't get through it. If it wasn't for my readathon and like really wanting to actually finish the books that I'm reading, I probably would have just stopped reading it at some point. But I was like, you know, by the time I was really, really annoyed by it and like, oh my gosh, I don't want to read this anymore at all, I only had like an hour and a half left of the audiobook. And so I was like, that's really not that much time. I might as well just finish it. So I did, but I didn't want to, so it got 1 star, and I am definitely going to be doing a review of that at some point too, to discuss more of my thoughts in a more eloquent manner. So moving on from Pride, I wanted to read something that I had very high hopes for and that I thought I for sure would enjoy. So the next book I picked up was Fangirl by Rowell. This is a book I've heard so many good things about, and I know like the plot of the book sounded really interesting to me. I did end up giving it 3 stars. There were times during this book where I was leaning towards 4 stars, and then there were other times when I was leaning towards 2 stars, because it just went back and forth between being like interesting and I like what's happening and I like these characters, to either really boring, or there were just times when the author just, like, I felt like there were just so many missed opportunities in this book. Like, for example, there's this chapter where our main character, gosh, I don't know if I can remember her name. Hang on, give me a second. It's almost there. Kath. Okay, so our main character, Kath, love interest is, I don't remember his name, and it's not even on the tip of my tongue. It's just gone. So, sorry. So, Kath's love interest is driving her back home from their university. He's driving her home so that she can spend some time with her dad. And at the beginning of this journey, they talk about the fact that he's going to drive her home and then drop her off, and then he's going to leave and come back to their university, and then he's going to come back in a few days and pick her up. And immediately I thought, that seems like a wasted opportunity, because this could be a cute like few days if he stayed there with her and like in her hometown and meeting her dad, and like there's a lot of relationship development that could happen on a trip like that. So it seems like a weird decision for him to not, for the author to decide to remove him from the picture for that whole weekend. But then on the way there, there's a big blizzard, and they talk about how maybe they should turn back because it's getting too snowy and it's dangerous to drive in. But they're kind of already like halfway there or whatever, and so they're not sure if they should turn around. And I thought, ooh, maybe they're gonna have to stop and stay at a hotel together, and it's gonna be like romantic tension because there's only one bed and, you know, all that fun jazz. But then that doesn't happen. They just decide to keep driving through the storm, and they end up getting to her house. So, but then because of the blizzard, he ends up having to stay the night instead of going back home immediately because, you know, it's dangerous to drive in. So it's like, oh, maybe fun things are gonna happen here. Still got that opportunity for like romantic tension, or maybe they're gonna stay up all night talking. But then there's like a really, really short scene of them talking, and then it just flashes to they're going to bed, and she's sleeping in her room upstairs and he's sleeping on the couch downstairs. And it's like, all right, I guess that's all that's gonna happen. But then she wakes up in the middle of the night and she goes to check all the doors and windows and make sure everything's locked up tight. And she goes downstairs into the living room to check the front door. And then he wakes up and he turns around and he's like, Kath, is that you? Is everything okay? And then she just says nothing and goes back upstairs and goes to sleep. So, and then basically the next paragraph says that when they wake up, he has to leave to go back to their university town because he has to make it to work that day. And that is it. That's all that happened. And then there's like a paragraph or two of saying like, she spent time with her dad for the weekend. And that was that entire trip. And it's like, what the hell? Like, what was the point of that entire chapter? Like, nothing happened. And not only did nothing happen, but there were like so many times where I was filling in the blanks ahead of time thinking, oh, maybe this is gonna happen, that would be cute, oh, maybe this, that would be fun, that would like give us some character development and bring the couple closer together. Maybe he's gonna like talk to her dad and maybe they'll get along or they won't get along, and how would that work, and you know, what are the relationship dynamics gonna be like through this. Maybe he'll have to stay for the whole weekend because of the blizzard and they'll get to know each other better. And just freaking none of that happened. And it was just so frustrating. And to be clear, it wasn't just that one chapter. Like, that was an example I'm giving you now, but there were several different chapters and several different scenes where things like that would happen that I was like, ooh, is like something gonna happen here? Oh no, okay, well, that's fine, I guess. It was frustrating. It was just disappointing. It was a disappointing book to me because I did have high hopes for it, but not like unrealistically high. I wasn't like way blowing it out of the realm of possibility. I expected it to be a good, decent book, and it was like fine, but it was very long and not a lot actually happened, and I don't really mind that if the stuff that's happening is like good character development or like funny things or like romantic things. I don't mind if it's not like some epic big plot line like the Hunger Games or Harry Potter or something, but it was just like boring and like none of that. I don't know. There were so many things that were disappointing about it. I did actually write a pretty long review for that one on Goodreads. So if you want to check out my Goodreads page, it is linked down below and you can see more of my thoughts on why that book was so disappointing. I'm probably gonna do a video on that too, actually, because that was like one that I had so much to say about because there were just so many things that were just weird to me and threw me for a loop. So 3 stars. Next up was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this book 5 stars. It was very, very good. She's just a really good author. Like she's probably one of my favorites now that I've read a couple of her books. She's just really good. She knows how to tell a really, really good story. And I feel like, I mean, I've only read like 2 of her books, but I feel like of the books I've read, she knows how to tell a good story and not fill it with a bunch of like filler and fluff and stuff. It's like, this story is captivating all on its own. You don't need to add extra drama or miscommunications between the couple. Like, the story itself is really interesting and has enough conflict by itself. Like, When True Loves is about a woman who, her husband gets in a helicopter accident and he's pronounced dead, and so it goes through the process of her, actually it starts out really cute with flashbacks to like them actually meeting when they were younger and falling in love, and then it goes through the grieving process of her losing him and getting over that and moving on to a place of embracing, you know, the potential of loving someone else again. And then she meets another man. Well, there's another man who is someone also from her past that she grew up with, and they end up connecting a lot because of the person she is now being very different than who she was back when she fell in love with her husband, Jesse. All of that really changed her a lot, and now she's the kind of person who really connects with this new guy, Sam. And so they meet and they fall in love and they get engaged. And then she gets a call and finds out that her husband is alive. So yeah, and that's not a spoiler, by the way. It's on the back blurb and it happens within the first chapter. We know that her husband is alive. So we know this whole story as we're watching her fall in love with Jesse. We know he's gonna die, or that he's gonna be pronounced dead, and that she's gonna go through this grieving process. And the whole time she's going through that process, it's heartbreaking, but we still know in the back of our minds that he's not actually dead and she's gonna get him back. But then we get to see her falling in love with Sam, and we fall in love with Sam and their relationship together. But then we still know that Jesse's gonna come back, and their relationship was really great too. So it's like, there's so much conflict and tension, and it's like, it's really big stuff. It's not conflict where the characters are just being stupid or, you know, miscommunications or whatever. It's stuff that's like, I don't even know how to begin to think about what I would do if I was in this woman's shoes. It's just a really, really emotional, gripping story, and I loved everything about it. I honestly have like zero complaints about it. It was beautifully written. It made me cry many times. I listened to the audiobook and I was crying at work, cleaning, like blinking away tears so I can see what I'm doing still. And I'm not gonna spoil anything at all, but I will say that I also loved the conclusion of the story too. And this is another one of those books that kind of, you know, it could go really wrong or it could go really well depending on what you want to have happen in the end. But personally, I felt very satisfied with the conclusion of the story. So I would highly recommend that book. Definitely 5 stars from me. Next up was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. And for this one, I'm just gonna say, I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. I watched this movie back when it came out and I loved it, but I had a friend of mine who had read the book and she said she didn't like the movie because the movie and the book were very, very, very different. And so that actually made me excited to read the book, because sometimes when you watch a movie and then read the book, it's kind of like you're just reading a book version of the same story, which is fun. But maybe there are like a few scenes or things that weren't in the movie, but it's basically the same. So what was cool about this experience is that I knew I liked the characters and I liked the world they were in with the oasis and stuff. The like overall plot was interesting enough that I didn't care if the rest of it was totally different than the movie. I knew I was gonna enjoy it. And that's totally what happened. I loved the world, I loved the characters, but my friend was absolutely right. The book is like 80% different than the movie. Like almost everything that happens is totally different. One thing in particular that I liked much better in the book than the movie was the romantic relationship. I felt like the romance was way more developed in the book, which isn't surprising because, you know, you have more time to develop a relationship in a book than in a movie. But I felt like it was so much healthier and more believable and not too over the top of like, I don't know. I think being in, well, what's his name? I'm just thinking of Parzival, but what's his actual name? Wade. Being in Wade's mind was, I think, really, really beneficial to this story, because there are some things, like some ways that Wade acts and things that he does that are really kind of unhealthy and not very great. So in the book, we got to see more of the fact that he realizes that these things might be a little unhealthy, and that his like obsession with finding this Easter egg and stuff is kind of grown to an unhealthy level. And that's something that I thought was just interesting to see, his own self-reflection on how he's acting, which we didn't really get to see in the movie. And of course, we also got to hear his thoughts on the relationship and the girl that he has a crush on and what he thinks of her. And, you know, it was just better. It was better than the book. So than the movie. So if you watched that movie and you really liked it and you just want more of that story, then totally read the book. You'll probably like it. The next book I read was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I gave this book 4 stars. It wasn't exactly my kind of story, which is partially why I read it, because I'm trying to sort of expand my mind and read different things that I wouldn't normally read. And I liked it a lot. There were some things that I wasn't super crazy about. It did take a little while for me to get invested in what was happening. I'm also not super convinced about the romantic relationship in the story. Like, I don't know that I really understand why the prince likes Cinder so much, but I'm kind of just on board with it because I want to be, because I like romance, so I want to like the couple that's falling in love. But yeah, there were a few things that I didn't really care for, but for the most part, I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to have a new series that I'm interested in, because it's been a while since I've read the first book of a series, and then like I know I have a few more books to look forward to, which is really nice. Book number 9 on my list is To Best the Boys by Mary Weber. Oh my gosh, you guys, this book is so good. If you liked The Savior's Champion, you will love this book. To me, it was like, it's funny that these came out sort of in similar times. I think To Best the Boys is a pretty recent release, if I'm not mistaken. And it's kind of funny because to me, they're like very, very similar books. I think To Best the Boys is like The Savior's Champion, but better written. I really like The Savior's Champion, and I don't think it was like super poorly written, but this book is just better. This book is basically about a girl who wants to enter this competition. It is a competition to win a scholarship to an all-men's university, and this is set in sort of a dystopian world that's kind of old-timey in some areas. In some ways, there are like sort of historical elements as far as like the gender roles, and women aren't like, don't have as much freedom as we do now, and they're kind of expected to be the supporters of the men, and the men are the ones who can go off to college and learn stuff and get jobs, and the women are the ones who are supposed to stay home and bake and take care of the family and stuff like that. But it's a dystopian world, and there are also magical elements to the story as well. But basically there is this competition that offers up a scholarship to a university for men to enter, and they fight for this scholarship, and whoever wins is pretty much guaranteed entry into the university, and they can go to school for free. Our protagonist is working on finding a cure for this disease that her mother has. She and her father are scientists, and they've been researching this for a long time, and she decides that it would be beneficial if she could go enter this competition, win the scholarship, and then she would be at the university and have access to all of their resources and their labs to be able to hopefully find the cure for this really horrible disease that's killing a lot of people in their town. But of course the competition is only for boys, so she has to enter the competition and disguise herself as a boy, and it's just a bundle of fun. I really loved when I heard this whole concept. I thought it sounds so fun and exciting, and it really was very fun and exciting. The beginning portion of the book was a little slow for me. I felt like it took a while to get actually into the promise of the premise, you know, to get to the part where she's actually entering the competition, which is what I picked the book up for. But although it was slow, I realized that it wasn't hindering my enjoyment of the book at all. I was actually still really enjoying every minute of it. I loved all the build-up, all the character development. There's some romance, and it's all really good, well-rounded characters and friendships, and all of that stuff was interesting enough that I wasn't upset that it was taking a while to get to like the big promise of the premise moment. I won't say anymore because it's just a really good book and you should read it if you want to find out more about it. I gave it 5 stars for sure. I would say second to The Perks of Being a Wallflower, this was definitely my favorite book of the month. And last but not least, the book I am currently reading, I'm about a little over halfway through the book right now, is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book, in case you're unaware, is very, very hyped in our community. So many people are talking about it. It's a very popular book, and I wasn't sure how I would feel about it because of the subject, just the name itself, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I was like, you know, how is this gonna be portrayed? Because I don't really agree with like getting married a bunch of times and divorced a bunch of times and stuff, so I was curious to see if it was gonna be something I'd enjoy, but I've heard so much good stuff about it, and after reading One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I knew it would at least be really well written, so I decided to give it a shot, and I am super enjoying it so far. There are a lot of things about this story that I actually did not know were gonna be a thing, and I don't really want to say what I was surprised by, because I think the fact that I was surprised by it is because people haven't been spoiling that for me, and I was happy that it wasn't spoiled for me, so I'm not going to say anything about it. But there were just like some interesting twists and turns throughout Evelyn Hugo's life story that I wasn't expecting, and it's just a really interesting story, and I'm not even gonna say any more than that because everyone's talking about this book. You've probably already heard of it, and I'll just be one more person on that long list of people saying that you should check it out and go read it because it's worth it. I'm not finished with this book yet, so I haven't given it a star rating yet, but I have a pretty good feeling it's gonna be a 5-star for me. And there you have it. Those are all the books I read in the month of May, and one that I'm still not quite finished with, but I did start it in the month of May. And yeah. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I don't do wrap-ups very often, but I will do occasional book reviews for anything that stands out above the others. If you're particularly excited to hear any of the reviews of the books I've mentioned, please let me know in the comments so I know what people are looking forward to hearing me talk more about. Would you rather hear me gush over how much I loved Perks of Being a Wallflower, or would you rather hear me rip Pride to shreds because it was awful and the worst? Let me know in the comments and I'll maybe do it. Who knows? And that's it. I'll see y'all next time and have a great day. Bye.